Hello everyone, this is Jyotsna. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial, we will see the interview question and answers on software testing part 2. In our part 1, the previous video, we have seen the top 20 questions. We will see from 21 to 40 questions in this video. So starting with the 21st question, which is our first for this tutorial. What is the difference between UAT, which is means user acceptance testing, and system testing? So we have already seen the detailed explanation about UAT and system testing in our other videos in the tutorials. Here we will see the main difference between both UAT and system testing. So system testing is a finding defects when the system undergoes testing as a whole. We are testing the system as a whole in the system testing means we are doing the end-to-end testing here. But for the UAT testing, user acceptance testing, it involves running a product through a series of specific tests, not the whole product, which determines whether the product will meet the need of its users or not. Means user acceptance testing, accepting the test for the users means user acceptance testing. This is the main difference between UAT and system testing. The next is what is test scenario? A test scenario is any functionality that can be tested, means the whole functionality as a one test scenario. It is called as test scenario or it is also called as test possibility. The next is what is test scripts. It is written in a programming language and it's a short program used to test part of functionality of the software system. In other words, a written set of steps that should be performed manually is known as test scripts. The next is what is test data. Test data is informative or information that is used to test software with various inputs and determine whether the resulting output matches the intended result. This data is generated based on the needs of the company. So, as the name suggests, test data is nothing but the data which we use for the testing. So next question, which is a very important question, which is latent defect. What is latent defect? Most of the interview ask this question. So the latent defect, this defect is an existing defect in the system which does not cause any failure as the exact state of condition has never been met. So most of the time there are many latent defect which we can see in the system which does not cause any failure for the system, but because we have never tested the condition um, or the set of condition that has never been tested, which is called latent defect. The next is what is test deliverables. So test deliverables are the set of documents, tools and other components that must be developed and maintained in support of testing. And these test deliverables are the different at the very different phases of the software development lifecycle. Means we have test deliverable before the testing, during the testing and after the testing. Next is what is mutation testing. This is also one of the type of software testing, mutation testing. So it is a technique to identify if the set of test data or test cases is useful by intentionally introducing a various code changes, means bugs, and retesting with original test data or test cases to determine if the bugs are detected. Means mutation. Mutating means introducing a code change or the bugs in the system and retesting with the original test data. The next is what is debugging. So debugging, this technique is used in development as well as testing also. So debugging means locating and correcting code errors in a computer program. Just locating the errors in a computer program. What are the different categories of debugging? So there are five different categories debugging have. The first one is brute force debugging, backtracking, cause elimination, program slicing, and fault tree analysis. These are the different categories. The next is what is fault masking. Explain with example. So what is fault masking exactly and give the example for that one. So masking is the presence of one defects hides the presence of another defects in the system. And one of the exact example is if the negative value cause a firing of unhandled exception. So if you have given negative value to the system, it is firing the unhandled exception. The developer will prevent the negative value input. This will resolve the issue and hide the defect of unhandling firing exception. So we have system if you give the negative value for this as a input and giving the negative value, if it is giving the exception, what developer will do it to prevent the negative value inputs, it will not take, the system will not take the negative value input, and that will resolve this issue of firing unhandled system exception, means fault masking. The next question is, what is the common risk that leads to a project failure? So here there are four different these are the four different risks that can be lead to the project failure. Not having enough human resources to test the project, or testing environment may not be set up properly as per the user's testing environment. Also, limited budget can also cause the project failure, and the time limitation for the testing can also cause the project failure. The next question is, what are the best practices for software quality analysis? So software quality assurance or analyst, anything. So these are some of the best practices given here. Continuous improvement in the system or the testing process. Also documentation of the testing, tools we use for the testing, and the metrics we are defining for the testing, responsibility by the team members, and experienced software quality analyst auditors. These are the some of the best practices we can do for the better or good software quality assurance. The next question is, what is the difference between test matrix and traceability matrix? So test matrix is used to capture actual quality effort, the plan, resources, and time required to capture all phases of software testing, while traceability matrix is mapping between the test cases to the customer requirements. So this is the difference between those two. Next is in manual testing, what are the stubs and drivers? This is also very important question. Interviewer might ask you what is stubs and drivers and where we use it in testing. So both the stubs and drivers are part of incremental testing. So for the incremental testing, it have two different types or approaches we can say, namely bottom up and top down approaches. So drivers are used in bottom up testing and stub is used for the top down approach to test the main module. The stub is used which is dummy code or program. Next is explain what is N plus 1 testing. So this is a very important question. The variation of regression testing is represented by N plus 1 testing. In this technique, the testing is performed in multiple cycles in which error found in test cycle N are resolved and retested in the test cycle N plus 1. This cycle is repeated unless there are no error found. This is nothing but N plus 1 testing. Next is, what is SDLC? SDLC means Software Development Life Cycle. What is it? So this is a life cycle of development of the software. Mostly include the requirement gathering and analysis, designing, coding, testing, deployment, and maintenance. These are the phases of the software development life cycle. So next question is, explain the difference between alpha and beta testing. One of the important question most of the time interviewer asks. So alpha testing is at the developer side before release, and potential clients conduct the beta testing at their sites. So this is the main difference. Alpha testing is conducted at the developer side on the user environment, but the beta testing is done by the client side. Next is, what is test bed? So a test bed is an environment used for testing an application, including the hardware as well as any software needed to run the program to be tested. So it is an environment for the testing. When should testing ends? So the next question is, when should we end the testing? Testing is a ongoing process. So there should be a time when we need to stop the testing. Okay. So these are some of the listed uh, down some of the time where we can stop the testing. First is the bug rate has fallen below an agreed upon levels. We can stop the testing. The testing or release deadlines have arrived, which is a time critical environment. So the next is testing budget is out of fund, where we need to stop the testing. A certain percentage of test cases have passed, so then also we can stop the testing. The alpha and beta testing periods have ended. After that, testing should stop. Also, the code functionality or requirement coverage have met at a declared point. That time we can stop the testing. These are the some of the points where we can or a tester should stop the testing. The last question is mention what are the categories of defects. So defect can be of any of these three categories. First is wrong defect, missing defect or extra defect. So what is wrong? When a requirement is implemented wrongly, then defect can occur, which is a wrong defect. Then next is missing. It is a variance from the specification, means the implementation and specification variation between them, an indication that a specification was not implemented or a requirement of the customer is not met. Then it is called missing category of defect. The next one is extra. A requirement incorporated into the product that was not given by the end user, means extra something implemented in the product, which is extra defect. It is considered a defect because it is a variance from the existing requirement. So these are the three categories of the defect. So here we have seen the 21 to 40 means 20 question, which is the second part of our interview question and answers on manual testing. We will be having a next one part, part 3, for the same interview questions, which are important questions for the interview on the software testing or manual testing. So thank you so much for watching the video. Keep learning.